The Galactic Council was in turmoil, its vast chamber filled with heated debates and the tension of impending conflict. Representatives from various species shouted over one another, their voices rising like a chaotic symphony. Maya Reyes, colonel of the United Earth Forces, stood at the edge of the council chamber, observing the turmoil with a mix of intrigue and concern. She had always believed that understanding was the first step to peace, but this gathering felt anything but peaceful. Maya's eyes scanned the crowd, taking in the alien delegates, the towering insectoid Xilari with their chitinous exoskeletons, the elegant, shimmering Lumari who floated gracefully above the ground, and the brutish, warlike Ferak, their muscular frames radiating barely contained aggression. Despite their differences, they shared a common fear. War loomed on the horizon, threatening to engulf their civilizations. "Order! Order!" roared the council speaker, an ancient being resembling a living nebula, its voice echoing through the chamber. Gradually, the cacophony subsided, and eyes turned toward Maya, who had been invited as the representative of humanity, often viewed with a mixture of fascination and disdain. "Honorable delegates," Maya began, her voice steady and commanding. "I stand before you not just as a soldier, but as a testament to humanity's journey through conflict. We have faced extinction and emerged stronger. We come not to preach, but to share our hard-earned lessons." Commander Zethra, leader of the Xanax, stepped forward, his reptilian eyes narrowing in skepticism. "You speak of strength, human, yet your history is stained with violence and destruction. What can you possibly teach us?" Maya met his gaze, unwavering. "Everything we have learned comes from our ability to adapt and survive. We've faced predators, disasters, and wars among ourselves. From each experience, we have emerged with strategies that balance aggression with empathy." A murmur rippled through the assembly, curiosity battling skepticism. Maya sensed an opportunity. She needed to showcase humanity's resilience and ingenuity. "I propose a series of simulations," she suggested. "We'll create scenarios based on our historical conflicts, allowing you to experience our methods firsthand. Only then can we truly understand one another." Zethra sneered. "You think your tactics are superior. You are nothing but Deathworlders, living in a brutal environment. Our people are refined, evolved. We have no need for your primitive strategies." Maya's heart raced, but she held her ground. "Refinement without resilience can lead to downfall. If you doubt our capabilities, then let us prove ourselves." The atmosphere crackled with tension. It was a gamble, but Maya could feel the weight of the moment. If she succeeded, it could pave the way for unprecedented alliances. If she failed, it could solidify the rift between their species. After a lengthy, charged silence, the council speaker raised a hand, calming the assembly. "Very well. We shall allow these simulations, but know this, Colonel Rice. Failure will not be taken lightly." Maya nodded, determination coursing through her. "Then let's prepare. Together, we will confront the true nature of warfare." As the delegates dispersed, Maya caught a glimpse of Zara, a young Lumari officer, who watched her with wide, curious eyes. There was a flicker of hope in that gaze, a spark of potential that made Maya believe they might not be as different as they thought. The following day dawned with a tense energy that permeated the council chamber. Delegates filed in, their expressions a mix of skepticism and curiosity. Maya sat at a table adorned with holographic displays, flanked by her team of military strategists. They were ready to present humanity's rich history of warfare, a history marked by innovation, sacrifice, and resilience. As the council gathered, Commander Zethra was the first to arrive, his presence demanding attention. He strode into the chamber with a swagger, his scales glistening under the harsh lights. As he took his seat, whispers of discontent rippled through the room. Maya braced herself, sensing that the atmosphere was charged for conflict. "Today, we discussed the so-called merits of human warfare," Zethra declared, his voice dripping with condescension. "How can a species so steeped in chaos claim to offer guidance on conflict? Your history is a litany of failures, destruction, and senseless bloodshed. The chamber transformed into a sprawling, immersive simulation environment, complete with dense, digitally rendered foliage and shifting shadows that mimic the chaos of an actual battlefield. Maya stood at the control console, her heart pounding as she prepared to launch the simulation. Around her, the alien delegates murmured, their expressions a mixture of skepticism and intrigue. "Attention, delegates," Maya announced, her voice clear and authoritative. "You will be divided into teams and face an ambush scenario. Remember, the key to survival is adaptability. Work together, or risk losing everything." Zethra shot her a challenging glance. "You really think your tactics will work against us, human? We will show you how warfare is done." Maya didn't respond, her focus shifting to the display as the simulation began. Holographic trees rustled, and the sounds of distant animal calls echoed through the chamber, immersing everyone in the scene. The teams were formed, humans paired with aliens, blending their diverse backgrounds to face the impending ambush. As the teams strategized, Maya observed from the control room. The Lumari, known for their telepathic abilities, quickly began to communicate plans, while the brutish Feroc displayed raw strength and a straightforward approach. The Exilari utilized their natural camouflage to blend into the environment, but there was a palpable tension. Many delegates were reluctant to accept guidance from humans. The ambush was set to commence, and Maya initiated the simulation. The tranquility of the environment shattered as a sudden burst of chaos erupted. Holographic attackers, representing a rogue faction, launched an all-out assault on the teams. "Now, move," Maya shouted through the comms. The humans and aliens scrambled, but confusion reigned. The Feroc charged forward, relying on brute force, while the Exilari struggled to coordinate their stealth tactics with the Lumari's cerebral strategies. Zethra, caught off guard by the sudden attack, barked orders, but they fell on deaf ears. "Focus," Maya urged, her voice rising above the din. "You have to adapt. The unexpected is the essence of warfare." Zethra's frustration boiled over. "We are not your pawns, human. We fight our own battles." "Then fight together," Maya countered, her patience wearing thin. "This isn't just about strength. It's about understanding your opponent." Gradually, her words began to sink in. Zara, the young Lumari officer who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. "Commander, we need to combine our strengths. The Exilari can create distractions while the Feroc engage directly. The Lumari can coordinate from a distance." Zethra hesitated, then nodded, finally recognizing the potential in collaboration. "Very well. Let's show them what we can do." As the teams began to adapt their strategies, Maya felt a surge of hope. The Feroc charged into battle, using their strength to create openings. The Exilari moved in and out of sight, flanking the attackers, while Zara used her telepathy to relay crucial information. The simulation began to shift in their favor. Yet, just as victory seemed within reach, a new wave of holographic attackers overwhelmed them, a deliberate twist designed to test their resolve. The chaos reignited, and the teams faltered again. Maya's heart raced. They were on the brink of collapse. "Focus. Think," she urged, desperation creeping into her voice. "Remember, you're not just fighting for yourselves. You're fighting for your species." Inspired, Zara rallied her fellow Lumari, sending out a psychic pulse that synchronized their movements. "We can do this. Follow my lead." With renewed vigor, the teams pushed back against the attackers. Each faction began to meld their unique tactics, forming a cohesive unit that began to outsmart the simulation's challenges. As they coordinated their efforts, Maya felt a sense of pride swell within her. Finally, after a grueling confrontation, the last holographic attacker fell, and the chamber fell silent. Maya released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, watching as the delegates processed what had just happened. Zethra, still catching his breath, turned to Maya. An expression of begrudging respect dawning on his face. Perhaps there is more to your kind than I initially believed. Maya smiled, a spark of triumph igniting within her. We've just scratched the surface. Imagine what we could achieve together. The first simulation had been a success, but the true challenge lay ahead. They had only just begun to bridge the divide between their species, and the journey would be fraught with obstacles. But for the first time, hope glimmered in the air. As the echoes of victory faded in the chamber, a sense of camaraderie began to blossom among the delegates. Maya observed the alien teams exchanging excited chatter, their initial skepticism slowly giving way to curiosity. For the first time, they had seen the potential in combining their strengths, but not all were convinced. Zethra remained reserved, his reptilian features betraying no hint of approval. "Let's prepare for the next simulation," Maya announced, eager to maintain the momentum. "This time, we'll focus on strategic defense, a lesson from our history of trench warfare." The delegates, buoyed by their earlier success, seemed more receptive. Yet beneath the surface, tension simmered. Maya caught glimpses of Zethra's faction whispering among themselves, their disdain palpable. They had barely begun to understand one another, and she sensed that their cooperation could easily unravel. As the teams gathered for the next exercise, Maya felt a tap on her shoulder. It was Zora, the Lumeri officer, her eyes bright with determination. "Colonel Reyes, can I speak with you?" "Of course, Zora," Maya replied, motioning her to follow. They stepped aside, away from prying ears. "What's on your mind?" "I think we're on the verge of something important," Zora said, her voice low but urgent. "But I'm worried about Zethra. He won't accept any strategy that involves human input. If we don't address his skepticism, it could derail everything we've accomplished." Maya nodded, acknowledging the truth in her words. "You're right. We need to turn that skepticism into curiosity. We can't afford to let pride get in the way of our progress." Just then, Zethra strode up, flanked by his fellow delegates. "What are you plotting, human?" He sneered, crossing his arms. "I see your kind is already scheming for the next embarrassment." "On the contrary, Commander," Maya replied, keeping her tone steady. "We're preparing to share another lesson from our history. This time, we're focusing on collaboration in defensive strategies. It's crucial for survival in warfare." Zethra's eyes narrowed. "Why should we trust you? You're Deathworlders. After all, what do you know about honor and warfare?" "Enough to know that war is not fought by strength alone," Maya countered, her voice firm. "It's about strategy, cooperation, and most importantly, understanding your enemy. We've learned it the hard way." Zethra scoffed but paused, considering her words. "Very well. Show us your so-called wisdom, but do not expect me to take orders from you." Maya nodded, grateful for the opportunity to prove herself once more. "I wouldn't have it any other way." The next simulation commenced, a complex scenario involving a fortified position under siege. Maya split the teams, mixing humans and aliens to foster collaboration. As they prepared, the tension was palpable, but so was the potential for growth. As the simulation began, a new wave of holographic attackers stormed the defensive line, overwhelming the teams. Chaos ensued, with Zethra's faction relying on brute force, while others struggled to maintain cohesion. Maya watched anxiously as the Feroc charged ahead, their tactics becoming more reckless by the moment. "Hold the line," Maya shouted over the comms. "Use your cover. We need to work together." Zora, visibly frustrated, reached out to Zethra. "Commander, we must adapt our approach. This isn't just about strength, it's about strategy." For a moment, Zethra hesitated, caught between pride and necessity. Then, with a begrudging nod, he relented. "Fine. Lumari, guide the formation. Silari, cover the flanks." Under Zora's leadership, the teams began to reposition, utilizing the natural terrain to their advantage. For the first time, the simulation felt like a true partnership. As they fortified their defenses, Maya felt hope swell in her chest. But just as victory seemed assured, A sudden wave of reinforcements surged against them, overwhelming their positions. The holographic attackers began to break through, and panic threatened to set in. "Stick together," Maya yelled, her voice rising above the chaos. "Don't let fear dictate your actions." In that moment, Zara rallied her fellow Lumari, sending a wave of confidence through their ranks. "We can turn this around. Focus on communication." The tide began to shift as the teams worked together, coordinating their efforts with newfound trust. Zethra, once the naysayer, fought fiercely alongside Maya, his instincts sharpening as he began to see the value in her strategies. As the simulation reached its climax, the combined forces managed to repel the attackers, achieving a hard-fought victory. Cheers erupted in the chamber, a mixture of human and alien voices echoing triumphantly. Zethra turned to Maya, his expression finally softening. "Perhaps there is something to your approach after all. But know this: trust is earned." Maya smiled, the weight of their earlier encounters lifting. "Then let's continue earning it, together." The path ahead remained uncertain, but for the first time, she sensed a flicker of unity, a fragile but essential foundation upon which they could build a brighter future. The excitement in the chamber was palpable after their hard-fought victory, a rare moment of unity among species that had long viewed one another with suspicion. Maya felt a rush of hope as delegates exchanged ideas, their laughter echoing off the walls. Zethra, despite his earlier skepticism, was now engaged, debating tactics with Samir and even offering insights from his own culture. But beneath the surface, not all were pleased. A small faction of the Xenax, loyal only to Zethra and fueled by a deep-rooted pride, huddled together, casting furtive glances at the celebration. Maya noticed their whispered conversations, a sense of unease settling in her gut. "Something doesn't feel right," she murmured to Zara, who stood nearby, eyes scanning the room. "I sense it too," Zara replied, her luminescent skin flickering with concern. "They're not accepting this cooperation. If they feel threatened, they could react violently." Just then, Zethra approached, his demeanor shifting as he caught wind of his faction's unease. "Colonel Reyes," he said, his voice lowered, "I believe we need to have a word. Alone." Maya glanced at Zara, who nodded subtly, signaling her support. "Lead the way, Commander." As they stepped aside into a quieter corridor, Zethra's expression hardened. "I can see the seeds of doubt sprouting among my people. They believe your influence is weakening our strength." "Zethra, we're not trying to weaken anyone," Maya replied, her voice steady but firm. "We're trying to survive together. Cooperation is essential if we are to face the challenges ahead." Zethra's scales bristled, but before he could respond, a loud crash echoed from the chamber. They rushed back to find the scene in disarray. Members of Zethra's faction had overturned furniture and were confronting a mixed group of humans and Lumari. The tension erupted into chaos as fists flew and voices raised, drowning out reason. "Stop! Everyone, stand down!" Maya shouted, pushing her way through the fray. But her voice was lost in the turmoil. In the midst of the brawl, Zethra shouted to his faction, "This is what they want. To undermine us. Show them our strength." The situation escalated quickly as the Xenax attacked indiscriminately, their reptilian forms moving with terrifying speed. Maya felt a surge of anger and desperation. This was not what they had fought for. They were on the brink of forging alliances, and now it was crumbling around them. "Zara, get the others to safety," Maya shouted, eyes darting around for Samir and the others. She had to contain this chaos before it turned lethal. "On it," Zara responded, her voice cutting through the din. Using her telepathic abilities, she began to guide the Lumari away, their shimmering forms flickering as they moved through the turmoil. Maya caught sight of Samir trying to protect a group of frightened delegates. "Samir, help me contain them," she called, rushing toward him. Together, they maneuvered through the melee, working to separate combatants and defuse the situation. "We're all on the same side," Maya shouted. "This infighting will only lead to our demise." Zethra, seeing his faction struggle against the mixed delegates, faltered. For a brief moment, uncertainty flickered in his eyes. But just then, a loud crash erupted from the corner as one of the Feroc warriors charged into the fray, his hulking frame sending several delegates sprawling. "Enough," Maya shouted, channeling every ounce of authority she had. "You are all soldiers. We fight for our survival, not against each other." In that moment of heightened emotion, Zethra raised his voice. "Fighting is what we do best. Show them our resolve." Maya's heart sank. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a betrayal. Zethra was actively inciting conflict. "Zethra, if you continue down this path, you will lead your people to ruin." His expression hardened, and with a wave of his hand, he rallied his followers, a vicious glint in his eyes. "Let them see what true warriors are capable of." Before Maya could react, Zethra's faction surged forward, their focus shifting entirely to her and Samir. A surge of adrenaline coursed through her veins as she prepared to defend herself. This wasn't just a physical confrontation, it was a fight for the future of their alliance. But just as things seemed hopeless, Zara's voice echoed through the chaos, uniting their fractured groups. "We cannot afford to let fear dictate our actions. We must stand together against this madness." Maya seized the moment, her voice rising above the turmoil. "Zethra, you can choose this fight, or you can choose a future. The galaxy needs us united, not divided." Caught between the roaring tide of chaos and the glimmer of hope for peace, Zethra paused, uncertainty crossing his features. But the path forward was unclear, and the battle for unity had only just begun. The chaotic fray raged on, bodies colliding and voices shouting in a cacophony of anger and confusion. Maya felt the pressure mounting as she stared into Zethra's eyes, searching for any sign of reason. This was no longer just about human warfare. It was a struggle for unity in the face of adversity. "Enough," she shouted once more, her voice breaking through the din. "This is not how we prove our strength. We're better than this." Zethra hesitated, and in that moment of vulnerability, Maya seized the opportunity. "We've faced challenges that would have torn lesser civilizations apart, yet we stand here together. We need to show that strength lies not in conflict, but in cooperation." Zethra's gaze flickered to his fractious faction, who were still caught in the throes of battle. They needed a leader to guide them back, to remind them of the larger purpose they had gathered for. Just then, Zara stepped forward, her luminescent skin shimmering with urgency. "Listen to her. We all share the same goal, to survive and thrive in a galaxy that sees us as different. If we allow this infighting to continue, we will be nothing but easy prey for our true enemies." Her words cut through the anger like a blade, drawing the attention of those still caught up in the violence. Slowly, a few Xenacs began to step back, glancing at Zethra for guidance. The Feroc paused, their brute strength faltering as they processed the unfolding scene. "Zethra, lead them," Maya urged, her heart pounding. "Show them that you can be a commander worthy of respect, one who knows when to fight and when to unite." Zethra's face twisted in frustration, but he found himself at a crossroads. The intensity of the moment weighed heavily on him. He turned to his followers, who were looking to him for direction. "This isn't the way," he finally barked, his voice a mix of anger and desperation. "We are warriors, not savages." A ripple of understanding passed through the Xenac's ranks. One by one, they began to lower their fists, the tension in the room shifting as they acknowledged the truth in his words. Maya felt a flicker of hope as she saw the light of reason dawning in their eyes. "Let's regroup," Zethra commanded, his tone now resolute. "We will not allow our enemies to win this fight for us." With that, he turned his attention to Maya, a grudging respect forming in the depths of his reptilian gaze. "Perhaps you're right, human. We have much to learn from one another, but trust must be earned." "Then let's earn it together," Maya replied, relief washing over her. She could see the beginning of a fragile alliance forming, and it felt like a small victory in an otherwise turbulent landscape. As the delegates slowly began to separate, nursing bruised egos and sore bodies, Maya felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. She turned to Zara, who was helping to calm the Lumari and other delegates, ensuring everyone was safe. "You did well out there," she said, gratitude in her voice. "We all did," Zara replied, her eyes shining with determination. "But we need to solidify this moment. If we are to stand united, we must train together, share our strategies, learn from one another." Maya nodded, invigorated by the prospect. "Agreed. Let's organize joint training exercises that incorporate our different tactics and philosophies. This will strengthen our bonds and prepare us for any future threats." Zethra approached them, flanked by a few of his more open-minded followers. "I am willing to lead a team," he said, a hint of vulnerability in his tone. "But I will need your guidance, Maya. We cannot rely solely on brute strength." "Then let's start today," Maya replied, her spirit rekindled. "Together, we'll develop a training regimen that highlights the strengths of each faction. This is our chance to build something greater." As they began to outline a plan, the atmosphere shifted from one of tension to collaboration. It was a small victory, but one that resonated deeply with everyone present. Maya looked around at the diverse group of species standing side by side, and for the first time, she felt a sense of unity beginning to take root. "Let's show the galaxy what we can accomplish together," she declared, her voice filled with determination. "This is just the beginning." With renewed purpose, they set to work, determined to transform the lessons of the past into a united front against whatever threats lay ahead. The galaxy was watching, and they would not let it down. Over the next few weeks, the atmosphere in the council chamber transformed from one of tension and distrust to one of collaboration and innovation. Maya, Zethra, Zara, and a diverse team of representatives from each species met daily to develop joint training exercises that would showcase their unique strengths and foster mutual understanding. In one session, Maya stood before a holographic display, outlining the first combined exercise, a multi-tiered defense against a simulated onslaught. "We'll integrate human tactics with Zinnak stealth and Lumari telepathy," she explained, her enthusiasm palpable. "Each of our strengths will compensate for the other's weaknesses. It's time we learn from each other." Zethra nodded, his expression more thoughtful than confrontational. "I believe the Feroc should lead the front lines. Their strength will serve as the first line of defense. The Salari can flank from the shadows. I'll coordinate with the Lumari to create diversionary tactics," Zara added, her eyes brightening. "We can confuse our opponents and protect our stronger fighters." As the delegates discussed strategies, Maya couldn't help but feel a surge of optimism. Each meeting reinforced the idea that, together, they were more formidable than any single faction alone. They were beginning to see one another not as rivals, but as allies bound by a common purpose. However, as the final training exercise approached, shadows loomed on the horizon. Reports from scouts warned of a growing threat, a rogue faction that sought to disrupt their efforts and leverage the chaos for their own gain. Maya's stomach knotted at the thought of their work unraveling before it truly began. One afternoon, during a strategy session, Maya gathered the delegates for a critical briefing. "We've received reports of a rogue group intent on sowing discord among us. They may attack during our final training exercise." Zethra's jaw tightened. "We cannot allow this to deter us. We will turn this exercise into a demonstration of our unity. If they want to fight, let them see what we're capable of." "Agreed," Maya responded, her determination solidifying. "But we must also prepare for the possibility that they will infiltrate our ranks during the exercise. We need a contingency plan." As they strategized, Maya noticed a flicker of doubt in some of the delegates' eyes. Fear of betrayal was palpable, but she refused to let it fester. "We can't let paranoia fracture our unity," she urged. "Trust must be our foundation. We will prepare, but we must also show our resolve to stand together." The day of the training exercise arrived, the chamber buzzing with excitement and trepidation. Teams were organized into diverse groups, each containing members from various species. As the simulation began, the atmosphere was electric, a mix of determination and camaraderie. But as they engaged in the exercises, the rogue faction struck. Holographic alarms blared as the training environment was abruptly hacked, morphing into a chaotic battlefield. Real attackers emerge, their faces obscured by masks, intent on sabotaging the alliance. "Everyone, fall back to defensive positions," Maya shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Zethra, lead the Feroc to the front lines. Zara, use your telepathy to coordinate." As the team scrambled to respond, Maya felt her heart race. This was not a simulation. This was a test of everything they had worked for. The delegates moved as one, their earlier training coming to life in a desperate fight for unity. Zethra led his Feroc warriors forward, their brute strength crashing against the attackers. Maya fought alongside him, shouting orders, feeling the adrenaline course through her veins. Zara's voice echoed in their minds, guiding them, rallying them to hold the line. As the rogue faction pushed harder, a wave of doubt swept over Maya. Would their efforts be enough? Just when it seemed the attackers would overrun them, the Lumari and Celari worked together to create a series of illusions that disoriented the assailants, buying precious time. "Now," Maya yelled, pointing to a vulnerable flank. "Push forward." With newfound resolve, the combined forces surged, using their strengths to repel the attackers. The chaos began to recede, replaced by a sense of shared purpose. Maya felt the weight of her responsibility, and for the first time, she truly understood the power of unity. As the last of the attackers fell, the chamber erupted in cheers, a triumphant cacophony of voices, human, Lumari, Feroc, and Celari, coming together in a celebration of survival. Zethra turned to Maya, a fierce glint in his eyes. "This was not just a battle for our lives. It was a battle for our future. We stand united." Maya nodded, her heart swelling with pride. "We will continue to build this alliance, no matter the odds against us. Together, we can face any threat." The battle had forged their unity in fire, but it was only the beginning. The galaxy awaited them, and they were ready to show what true collaboration could achieve. In the aftermath of the skirmish, the council chamber buzzed with excitement and relief. Delegates from various species were coming together to tend to the wounded, offer support, and share stories of their individual bravery. Maya felt a sense of pride wash over her as she watched the initial hesitance and distrust dissolve, replaced by genuine camaraderie. "Colonel Reyes," Zara called, her voice cutting through the noise. "Come quick." Maya rushed over to find Zara at a console, a holographic display projecting data on the recent attack. "Look," Zara said, her expression serious. "We managed to capture one of the rogue attackers during the chaos. He's been brought here for questioning." Zethra approached, his demeanor transformed from that of a warrior to a leader. "This could provide us with crucial information about who's behind this. We need to know their motives and how deep this conspiracy runs." "Let's not waste any time," Maya replied, her mind racing. "We must get to the bottom of this. If they can infiltrate us once, they can do it again." In a secure chamber, the captured rogue was bound and guarded. His mask was removed, revealing a young man with wild eyes and a defiant expression. "You think you can intimidate me? You're just a bunch of misfits." Maya stepped forward, her voice steady. "We're not here to intimidate you. We want answers. Who sent you? Why disrupt our unity?" The rogue scoffed but remained silent. Zethra leaned in, his presence commanding. "You can choose to tell us willingly or suffer the consequences of your defiance. We are not the fragmented groups you expected. We are united, and we will find the truth." As the interrogation unfolded, it became clear that the rogue faction was not a single group, but a coalition of various disgruntled species who saw the alliance as a threat to their own power. They believed that by sowing discord, they could dismantle the fragile unity forming among the Deathworlders and their allies. They fear what we can become, Zara remarked, her tone contemplative. An alliance that stands together is a force unlike any other. With this knowledge, Maya felt renewed determination surging within her. Then we need to use this information to strengthen our alliance. We can't let fear dictate our actions. Back in the council chamber, Maya called for a meeting with the delegates. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation, and she could sense the unease lingering in the air. "We've faced our first real challenge together," she began, her voice clear and steady. "What we just experienced was a trial by fire. It has shown us the value of unity, but it has also revealed our vulnerabilities." Zephyr stood beside her, nodding in agreement. "If we allow fear to control us, we will fall apart. But if we face this threat together, we will emerge stronger than ever." A chorus of agreement rang out among the delegates. One by one, representatives shared their thoughts and ideas on how to solidify their alliance. Strategies were discussed and plans formed. Together, they began to draft a document, a formal alliance between the species, bound by mutual respect, cooperation, and shared goals. As the night wore on, the atmosphere transformed from one of uncertainty to one of hope. They forged agreements not just on military tactics, but also on cultural exchanges, trade, and shared technology. They recognized that their differences were not weaknesses but strengths that could complement one another. Maya stood back, taking it all in. It was a beautiful tapestry of diversity, woven together by threads of trust and shared purpose. They were no longer just individual factions. They were a unified front, ready to face whatever the galaxy threw at them. "Together, we can build a future that honors all of our histories," Maya declared, her voice rising above the gathered delegates. "We can ensure that our children will not know the divisions that plagued us. We will stand as one against any threat." Cheers erupted throughout the chamber, a harmonious blend of voices that resonated with newfound strength. As Maya looked around, she felt a surge of optimism. They had turned a potential crisis into an opportunity, and they were ready to face the stars together. With the dawn breaking outside, a new era had begun. The galaxy was vast and filled with challenges, but together, they would navigate its complexities. United, they would not just survive. They would thrive, proving that even the most disparate of beings could come together to forge a brighter future.